My name is Dr. Dorothy Jenkins Fields. I am a public historian, a certified archivist, historic preservationist, journalist, and former librarian. I was born in Christian Hospital, Miami, Florida, right here in Colortown, on New Year's Eve, December 31st, 1942. I spent my first 6 years right here in Colortown, 2 blocks north of the Lyric. And after that, my family in 1948 moved to Brownsville, which is northwest of Overtown. When I was born, my mother, her 2 sisters, and 4 brothers were all college graduates right here in Miami's Colortown. As far as we know, this is the first family, black or white, to have as many as 7 children finish high school and college and return to Miami as professionals before the end of World War II. Yeah. And so it's from the family stories. Think of it, 7 people with 7 professions coming to my grandmother's house every day in the afternoon, looking in the pot to see what she had cooking, but also sharing their stories. And so it was those stories that I heard day after day, year after year, those repeat stories that really annoyed me. I didn't know why they were telling them. I was annoyed by them because they were always repeating them. And I did not realize that they were giving me the history for Miami. I remember hearing that early, I guess maybe 1907, 1908, when my uncle, who later became the medical doctor specializing in radiology, said that the only dog he ever had was killed because the family this night, I guess there were maybe 4 children at that time, were put to bed early because word was out that the Klan was going to ride. Think about it. There were no washers and dryers. There were no dry cleaners. Who washed and ironed the robes for the Klan? The black women. So when they were going to ride that night, the robes came out. And the black women would come and pass the word. And that meant that you should get dinner early, get everything done, and turn out the lights. So evidently my family did this, and my uncle's dog barked. And my uncle the dog was next to my uncle. The Ku Klux Klan rode up on the porch and shot through the window and killed the dog. And my uncle was 8 years old, he said. He was right next to him. And so stories like that, chilling stories like that, let you know that separation by race was real. I was a librarian at Myrtle Grove Elementary School in 1974, preparing for the bicentennial. Now, at that time, Myrtle Grove Elementary School was all white, and I was the first black faculty member. There were all kinds of signs. Everybody should participate in the 200th birthday of America. So I thought, well, this is a good idea and a good way for the children, the white children in this school, to learn something about local history, black history. And I didn't really know any history. I just heard the stories. I hadn't put anything together. And I thought to teach is to learn twice. So if I get books and get book jackets to put on the bulletin board early, I'm doing it 2 years ahead. And I read the books about what has happened in Miami, in the black community, then I'll learn something and they will too. So I called and told her I was looking for books written by blacks and about blacks in Miami and in the state of Florida. So she put me on hold, and then she came back after an enormous length of time. It seemed like forever. And she said, well, we don't have any books about Black people. I said, how many books are in the library? This is the downtown Miami Dade County Library. Oh, I was, out of breath. I was incensed that they didn't have any, and especially after she took such a long time. So she said, no, we have about 10,000 books in the library, but no books about Blacks. So I asked why, and the answer she gave changed my life and the life of the entire community as relates to Black history. She said, and I quote, I guess those people haven't thought enough of themselves to write their history. And I was stunned. I could not prove her wrong. I mean, I hadn't seen any. I was a librarian. I should have seen them. I thought maybe while I was in college, people had written a bunch of books I didn't know. Well, I was just frustrated and upset and concerned that there were no books. I went home and mentioned it to my uncle, the radiologist, because I wanted to know from him, why haven't you all written a book, a history book? He said, we've been too busy trying to survive. And that's when he recounted some of the things that they'd been through. He said, it's going to be up to you and your generation to save the history. And it was then that I was reassigned from the school, Myrtle Grove Elementary, to the downtown administration building for Dade County Public Schools. And they gave me 2 years. They said, in 2 years, you can write a book, one book, and then we'll put you back in a library. You have to agree that within each week, one day you will do research on Blacks, one day you will do research on women, and 2 days a week you will take the research that you have, the findings that you have, and you will develop curriculum, and then the other day you will take them to the schools. I accepted the position, and they said, oh yes, and by the way, we don't have any place for you to sit in the administration. You will be assigned to the Historical Museum of Southern Florida. That's where I started. That's where the Black Archive started, at the Historical Museum of Southern Florida, now known as HistoryMiami. Whenever I had lunch, I would gobble my lunch down and go in the library and read the journals and see what was going on. And I mentioned it to my uncle. He said, why don't you start collecting pictures and photographs and documents? But you're a librarian, so you won't know what to do with them. See if you can find a graduate school. And without asking, he said, I will write the check. And he did. And I was able to get my certification in archives administration. And as a part of the graduate program, you always have to write a paper. So I told them about my situation and that I was starting to collect documents. So they said, oh, well, wait a minute, before you do that, you need to start, and you need your own organization, because any materials you collect on school time will belong to the schools. So I didn't collect anything, and instead I went ahead and started, incorporated the Black Photographic Archives. I was able to go to Emory, get my certification in archives administration, and it was there that I learned about not only archives, but and processing and making documents available to the community, but I learned about historic preservation. You can save buildings. One day, once we did incorporate and we drove by the Lyric, it did not have a roof. Pigeons were flying in. The homeless were defecating in it. We're talking about the 78, 79. And there was a sign saying that the city was going to tear it down because it had been a church, that it had turned into a church, and the church had all but abandoned it. And I mentioned to my uncle, he said, oh no, you can't let them tear that down. You have to save it. so that the future generations will know that we were not just hanging around on the corner, that we were really very active in saving the history for them, and we expect for them to do the same. Without knowing it, we might repeat ourselves, and it's important that it be known and that it be told, as we would say from the Bahamas, that we's one, that we all came from West Africa. And so even though we have different languages, even though we have different customs, we are in fact all a part of a culture, of people, of a proud people, of who have in fact given a lot to the world.